So welcome everyone. Welcome back this fall to the Austining Library virtual potluck. I'm very excited to have Ashley Covelli with us from Big Flavors from Tiny Kitchen. So Ashley, let's start the discussion. Let's talk cookbooks and pizza and flatbread.
Yeah, so thank you for joining. We have there's so many great cookbooks that are all about pizza, but additionally there are a lot of cookbooks that have small sections with a couple pizza recipes that are really good. So this was a really fun month for me to kind of go through the different cookbooks and see what was what. I listed all the ones that I checked out in the PDF that came with the class registration. But I'll just kind of do like an overview of some of the ones that stood out the most to me. And I have like a couple tools that are really useful. And if anybody has any cookbooks or favorite pizza recipes and flatbread recipes that they want to talk about, I always welcome that. I'm more than able to talk to myself for an hour, but I love the interaction. So the first book I'm going to share, because I thought the name caught me. My website's called Big Flavors from a Tiny Kitchen, and this book was called Big Flavors from Italian America. So I saw that and I was like, okay, well, obviously I need to get this book. So there's one section of this book that's about pizza. It's by it's a Cook's County book, so it's a big assortment. It's got just Italian appetizers and snacks, sandwiches, soups and salads, pasta, weeknight meals, all that stuff. But if you go to the pizza section, what's really cool about it, it's got New York style pizzas, Chicago, New England. It's got all these different regions of the country. So this is a kind of cool tour of, like, I mean, we all live in New York, so we're familiar with the New York City, like thin crust pizza. But it also goes into, I grew up in the Midwest, so I'm familiar with a lot of different types of pizzas. This is like the traditional Chicago deep dish. So the crust is very thick and the sauce is on top, which is super different. And it gets a lot of like, especially from New Yorkers, but consider a different thing. Like, separate it from pizza if you must. Like, don't compare it to a New York pizzeria pizza and just try it. It's more of a meal in one slice. So the one that they show here is just like mozzarella and sauce, but there are ones that have like tons of toppings baked in there too, but it's just like it's a hefty pizza. And there's a website you can actually order. It's called Lou Maldona's, I think, from Chicago. You can order them. They come frozen to your house, and it comes with directions on how to bake it so that it's tastes like it's fresh from the restaurant. And I know I got one for Valentine's Day from a friend that was heart-shaped, which it's a great gift if you ever want to. But the directions include how to bake it for optimal cheesiness, which I don't know why you would ever want non-optimal cheesiness. So we followed those. It was like a 2 stages of baking. So again, very different, but worth trying. And then Chicago thin crust pizza, it's more like it's thin and they kind of cut it in squares. So instead of, I learned recently it's called pie cut. So there are some pizzerias that do the circles and they cut them into squares. So you get, some pieces have edge crust, some don't at all. So I guess kind of like brownies, like you get some like the center brownie. So there's no, I like a corner brownie personally, but I thought that this was cool to show the different styles across the country. This is a New England bar style pizza. They've got St. Louis pizza. I mean, there's things that, I never even knew like different places were known for their pizzas. Detroit pizza, this kind of reminiscent of like what's it called?
Like a calzone or something? Like
no, it's like
Sicilian.
It's got like pot. Yeah, Sicilian. That's what I was thinking.
Oh yeah.
How it's like the thicker kind of like focaccia with the toppings. And then Philadelphia tomato pie. That looks like focaccia topped with like really thick tomato sauce. I have not tried this, but I'm like very curious.
Actually, when I went to Philly, we did a food tour and they gave us that pizza.
Nice.
Yeah, how like what was it like?
It was good. It was tasty. Just more right without the cheese. It's just really the sauce and like a focaccia. That's what I would.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was tasty. There's the whole backstory. I don't remember all the details though about it.
Yeah, I love food tours. There's one that we did years ago in New York City. It was a Big Onion walking tours, and it was a multi-ethnic eating tour of the Lower East Side. So you walk,
that's
you
awesome.
eat. It was amazing.
That's awesome.
And it's run by history students, so that are going to college to be historians, and so they actually know the stuff about the areas where you're walking around, and so it's actually really educational too and delicious. So yeah, this has like Sicilian, thin crust, just a bunch of different grilled pizza. So I thought it was an interesting perspective on different styles of pizza around the country. So this is gonna sound crazy, but where I grew up in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and then I also lived in Wisconsin, but in Indiana, there's a section of the state that they had Pizza Huts run by this one person. So it was franchises and he ran them. He did something different. I don't know what with the dough, different than any other Pizza Huts I've ever been to. And the pizza there was so good. And you wouldn't like Pizza Hut. I've had it in many other states, including New York. It's not my thing. And my Italian husband was there. He came to visit. He can vouch it's actually very delicious. So I know a lot of people scoff at things like pineapple on pizza or whatever, but there's some fun stuff out there. I think you have an open mind and try not to go with any preconceived notions. Just see if you enjoy it. If you enjoy the flavor, I don't feel like it matters what you label it as. Like if you need to call it something else, that's fine, in my opinion. But so I picked it because of the name, but that's one of the things I love about the library is you can just see something that stands out for whatever reason and you can find really interesting things based on that. This book, I had seen this before, but I had never checked it out. This is like the Pizza Bible. This is like, is this the one you were talking about earlier, Joanna, that somebody was recommending?
Sorry, not that one.
Yeah, well, this one is, if you want to know how to do all of the things from scratch, like this book has, it's a very hefty book and it has it covered. So it's by Tony I'm married into an Italian family. Gimandiani, maybe. 11-time world pizza champ. So he's got some street cred. And I thought this was interesting. I've never seen this in a book before, but I don't know if the library did it or the publisher did it. There's a thing taped in here, like a piece of paper that says, in the following dough recipes, please disregard the phrase enough for one pizza under the recipe title. And then it lists a bunch of recipes and the page number. And it says, in most cases, these doughs make enough for 2 to 3 pizzas, depending on which you're making. And then there's another correction on page 187, the dry yeast amount should be a different amount. So I've never seen a correction stuck into a book before. But yeah, I just thought that was kind of interesting.
That's kind of interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen a correction for a cookbook before. It's one actually, it's called Cook Once, Eat All Week that I bought because I checked it out from the library. And I bought a copy of it and I saw when I bought it, there was a page and it's like recipe corrections. And so I printed it out and like stuck it in the book but by the pages, because I probably wouldn't remember if I was making whatever dough to go back and look at this page. But yeah, I mean, the books are printed, they're printed. So this cookbook, the intro, hi Beverly. Oh, she doesn't have audio.
Yeah.
Okay. So the intro, I think that this chef owns a pizzeria out in California, if I'm not mistaken. But I'm on the wrong book, sorry. Pizza Bible. He basically has this whole front section that tells you the master class. So he recommends before you try any of the recipes in this book, read through the first 19 pages. He wants you to know his tools of the trade, equipment that you need, the theory behind pizza dough. His restaurant is Tony's Pizza Napolitana in San Francisco. He's got a shopping list with your basic ingredients that you need. And he really talks through his thoughts behind pizza and how the kind of pizza he likes isn't going to just fill you up after a slice or two and make you feel kind of like, eh. The way you let the dough sit for 24 to 48 hours makes it more digestible. So it's really interesting because I've had different types of pizza like that before where you feel like you ate like a brick, you just kind of feel gross. But then other ones, I feel like I didn't know that the difference was the dough. So I thought that was really interesting. And so one of the things he recommends, I don't know if you guys are familiar with a pizza stone. It's like a big, it can be round or rectangle, that you put in your oven to heat up, and it retains the heat really well. So when you use a pizza peel to slide your dough off, which is this guy, this is a pizza peel, it's like a handle, and mine's got like a little kind of angled notch here. So when you slide it off, you're putting it right onto a hot surface instead of putting like a cold pan into the oven. So that'll help the bottom get crispy. I used to have a pizza stone, and it broke, it shattered. And I think this happens a lot. So there's a relatively new-ish thing out called a pizza steel. And I made my husband bring it upstairs because it's very heavy, but I have mine to show you. Oh, it's literally a giant piece of steel. Oh, so this goes in, we just leave ours in the oven all the time, but it heats up really, really hot. It holds the heat well. So even if you're opening and closing the oven to add, more pizzas or whatever, you're not losing the temperature like you would, when you're baking a cake or something. If you open and close, you're lowering the temperature of the oven. So this is great. And we leave it in the bottom rack, and it kind of, like for when I'm baking bread or something, I just leave it down there and it kind of holds the heat in the oven. You have to preheat it for a while though. I think like baking bread and stuff, they recommend about an hour to preheat the oven. And because you do like a really high temperature. So if you have an oven thermometer, it's really good to check to see if your oven is actually heating to whatever temperature you think it is. If you preheat it to say 400 degrees, when the preheating beeper goes off, check and see what the thermometer says. It's often not anywhere near there. So you might need to let it go a little longer to make sure it's really at the right temperature. And that can also help if you've noticed that you've had like things not baking properly. Sometimes it's just that your oven hasn't gotten hot enough before you've started yet. So I thought that this is a cool tool, and this thing won't break. It's more likely to break something else like your tile on your floor or something if you're not careful with it. But you can put it on the grill. You do need to season it before you use it, like you do with a cast iron skillet, which I did not know when we first got it, and we used it and then it rusted and we're like, well, what's that? It was, shiny steel. You have to season it. So this book has a really good section on weighing, like how to weigh different flours and bakers' percentages. This is the stuff that kind of makes me glaze over when you're talking about like the hydration of the pizza dough, but he really breaks it down to give you, like when you read it, you really feel like I could actually do this, not like there's no way I can do it. And he's trying to help get you pizzeria style results, but in your own home versus just like a fad soggy bottomed pizza. And this book and many of the other books really focus on the quality of ingredients, being, pizza doesn't have to be complicated. So when you're only using a few ingredients, so he says, there aren't that many ingredients involved. So every single one needs to be the best you can get your hands on. So he says a package of store-bought mozzarella, shredded mozzarella might be convenient, but it's likely to have cellulose added as an anti-caking agent, and it probably won't be as flavorful as cheese you grate yourself. So he just kind of, with every ingredient, the the fresher you can get it, or, you know, we have great options especially in this area. You can go to a pizzeria too if you don't want to make your own dough because it's intimidating or you just don't have the time. You can go to a pizzeria. Joanna was mentioning she goes down to Arthur Avenue to buy in the Bronx to buy pizza dough. You know, pizzerias are often very willing to sell you some of their dough, and you know it's good. And one of the other books recommends, actually, if you have a hard time finding an ingredient for your pizzas, you can ask a pizzeria if they can sell you some of whatever type of ingredient you're looking for, because I mean, they already bought it. They, you know, they may not, but it's worth asking. So the photography in this book is really beautiful. He goes over the different types of flours. He shows different types of tomato sauces. So he lists, he has a lot of charts in here, different brands. So it'll be like the tomato product, the professional brands. So if you go to like a food restaurant supply store, what brands they'll be, and then supermarket brands that he recommends. So if you want whole peeled plum or pear tomatoes, he's telling you, the guy who wrote the Pizza Bible, who's won 11 World Pizza Championships, tells you that the supermarket brands you should look for are Di Napoli or Bianco di Napoli organic. So I'd be inclined to trust his opinion on things like that. So once you get through the first section, he does he's got the theory of pizza relativity, and he said that pizza is always relative. So just because something works one time doesn't mean it will work exactly the same next time. It says the ingredients, the age, the water, the weather, the elevation, your equipment, your oven, how long your dough is proofed, they all make a difference. So there's no single truth. So I feel like this is reassuring to know that sometimes things change, and this, like, he tells you, you kind of have to use visual clues to see what's happening and not always just depend on what the recipe says. So I feel like, especially, I think a lot of Italian cooking is kind of like that, like you kind of go with feel versus how it necessarily says as prescribed on the recipe. So he goes through a whole like making starters and all that, and then he gets on to the pizzas, and he recommends the first time you make a pizza to do this one recipe and do 2 different styles of pizza with that same dough to see how those 2 are. I think one was just like a standard like margarita pizza, and one I can't remember the other one, but to see how it is, and then go and experiment with all these cool like fig, almond, and Monterey Jack. So just lots of fun like things you can do with seasonal produce. And I just think it's nice to see, you know, somebody walk you through the steps of how to do each one, kind of the basic level first, and then you build on that. So this is it's a very thorough book, but it still feels approachable. So this was a good one. Beverly, are there any pizza books that or pizza recipes that you're particularly fond of, or any local pizzerias that you like? Just curious.
Oh, my husband loves the thin crust at Paradise Restaurant in Verplanck on Broad Street.
Oh, hang on. I need to wait. Paradise Pizza?
At the Paradise Restaurant. They're open only for dinner now from Wednesday or Thursday through Sunday. And it took about 30 years for us to get there. And when I finally did, I had to agree. It was pretty darn good pizza and all the good quality toppings.
Yeah.
And I'm not a fan of Italian or things with tomato and nightshade family. So my question was cauliflower crust pizzas, and the keto uses chicken meat as a crust.
Oh, I've seen that before, kind of like a chicken parm, except like as a pizza. Well, I guess the sauce would have that, but I've seen something similar where they pound out the chicken real thin and they bread it and they use that as the crust for a pizza. I had that in Long Island. Yeah.
Saw that recently on the blog and videos that Princess Anna and Nana made. So apparently the grandmother, mother of this child with whichever disorder that has frozen joints and whatnot,
Okay.
they together made this, and I didn't take down the recipe. I might have screenshot it, but I know that it was for a keto diet, and because mother, I guess, requires that in her diet, and it was chicken.
That's awesome. That's something I love about things like pizza or like, you know, tacos. You can kind of customize it to meet whatever the needs are or the preferences. Like there's so many variations you can do. And even if you, like if somebody makes a pizza and you do eat meat, but there's no meat on it, like it's still pizza, it's still gonna be delicious. You know, it's like there's just yeah, it's such a versatile food. I've heard I know a lot of people like the Trader Joe's cauliflower crust. I wasn't a fan of it, but I don't know, maybe I didn't cook it right. You know, sometimes online people will give alternate instructions for the directions that are on the package of certain things because they just sometimes I feel like the package directions are a little off, but it's definitely something to experiment with. There are a lot of gluten-free options in this area though. So I feel like a lot of restaurants have gluten-free pizza options. I'm trying to think of where I was recently that had that. I think Basta, are they still around? Basta in Austin? I think they have or had gluten-free. I'm not sure. I haven't been to that area in a while. Locally here, Wood and Fire in Pleasantville has some good ones. D'Italia, we got a delivery by mistake. It was supposed to be for one of our neighbors, and they were like, where was that delivery from? Because it looked really good when they brought it, you know, like it smelled good when they brought it to our door, and he said it was from D'Italia, and that was really really good. They have a lot of interesting specialty pizzas there.
It looks like Basta still is open and all that, so at least
Yeah.
the website. So yeah.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure they have gluten-free options last I checked.
Where's Italia?
D'Italia is on, I put a link on the last page of the PDF, but it's 238 North Highland, so it's near that Texas fried chicken and gyro place, and there's an El Salvadoran restaurant in between there. And it's funny because I'm sorry?
In Austin.
Yeah, and Ossining. So it's funny because if you order from like the chicken place, you can get like an Italian combo. They work together, like those three restaurants work together, which is really smart because, you know, like sometimes my son wants chicken strips, but we're ordering from, you know, whatever place. And it's kind of cool that they are working together with other local businesses. Yeah. And I know, go ahead.
I think her,
Oh yeah, your audio's cutting out.
Got you back now. Oh,
Okay.
The other thing I want to mention. Oh, I've probably done this now for 30 or more years. And as a stepmom, I did it with my young stepchildren. And it's brown rice pizza. And this is before they made brown rice flour into pizza.
Okay.
Brown rice and cook it. And if you don't have a microwave to reheat it later to keep moisture in it, you have to use it right away. So 35, 40 years ago, when I probably did this, we didn't have microwaves. So you had the brown rice, and then you added your mozzarella cheese, either dairy or soy, and whatever seasonings you wanted, like oregano or a turkey seasoning, so that it had sage in it. Or just your fresh herbs, which of course I've grown myself. And you bind it together with an egg, or if you wanted it to be eggless, of course, you could use wheat flour or any kind of flour, I imagine. And when you stir it together, all the mozzarella melts and it looks like strings of dough that you're making. So you've got all this mixed together, put it in a plate or whatever vehicle you have that's greased, and put it in the oven for 10 minutes. You'll see the oils in the cheeses boiling. You take it out. So that sort of seals the crust a little bit. Then you put on toppings. Of course, I avoided tomato, so I would use winter squash that had been mashed up. So it had color and sweetness, natural sweetness. And then whatever, again, more mozzarella cheese or your dairy cheese on top. Now, if you froze the cooled off crust and brought it back out, it was as good as gold. You wouldn't want to, of course, dairy. But if there was left over, it naturally ages, feels, and tastes really great the next day. Either room temperature, cold if you're that frantic, or heat it up again. And the kids all loved it. The middle girl, who's the homemaker type of person, and they're all now into health anyway. And a lot was because I guess I was role modeling.
Yeah, you were ahead of your time on the gluten-free crust there too, right?
Well, because, you know, I would have the table available for all of them to make their pizza. And the oldest one would always make a double white cheese pizza. And if she made it more thin than the other one who made it more thick, you know, it was all to their preference. And she kept, the middle girl kept asking, what's the recipe, all through her teenage years. And I'm not sure she ever did make it. And of course, now you can buy rice pizzas, I guess, also in the store.
Yeah.
But you make it from a whole grain stuff. And like I said, now you have a microwave, so you could have the leftover rice at whatever day you want to reheat it again, and keeping them, it would probably, you know, fluff up good with all of the ingredients you put in.
Do you have an actual like written up recipe for that? Because I think that
No,
would be fun.
You don't need it. Just write down rice that's cooked, add the cheese of your preference and the seasoning that you want, and bind it together with an egg or flour. And that's your crust.
That would be fun to make like mini pizzas too, like make little, you know, you could use that to do little individual like appetizer size ones. That would be really cute.
Sure. Yeah.
Or
make it for fancy potlucks, whatever. But yeah, that would, I make over and over and over again, not only for myself, but as the children were in my life, you know. And I do less cooking in the kitchen right now, but that would be one thing I would do again.
Yeah, well, and I think too with kids, it's something I've been learning from the kids cooking classes I've done. Giving kids options for customizing makes it so much more appealing to them, because like kids get so little power in like the grand scheme of things. And like, so having that, like, this was my decision to do this. Like I decided I wanted to put this, this, and this. And even though my mom put this on there, I was able to do this. And I think like that really, really helps build confidence. And also like, you're still getting them to eat what you want them to eat, but then, you know, they are adding their own kind of flair to it, which is pretty cool. So speaking of white pizza, this book has some really fun white pizzas. This is called Pizza Camp by Joe Bedia. So he has a pizzeria in Philadelphia called Pizzeria Bedia. And the style of this book is so fun. There's all these like hand-drawn letters. He's got like a lot of the pages, they've written whatever the illustrator listed on here. Sure, it's inside, but the I think he might have done the lettering, because they listed photography, but they didn't list an illustrator. So it's divided into parts, and everything has this fun kind of like informal kind of style to it. So part one is basic pizza, and it goes over equipment, dough, and sauce and cheese and all that stuff. Part two is all about white pizzas. So this column, so he's got white pizza, roasted mushroom cream, ricotta cream, spring cream, roasted or fresh garlic cream, Calabrian chili cream, and English pea puree. And then he walks you through how to kind of like use those different bases in different ways. And then the third part is toppings, and he's got a whole list of I love the title, like the titles of the sections. So you got like sausage, bacon, anchovies, random wild things is one of the sections. So if you go, so that's on page 91. If you flip over to that section, like random wild things. And he talks about in Pennsylvania the small window for like foraging for things. So Ramson green garlic, fiddleheads, and then just the style of photography is really kind of fun. It's not your average like still life of food, truffles, greens, and it's just I thought it was a fun way to talk about toppings. Like those are the ingredient photos to show you what he's referencing. But the white pizzas, there's also, this book probably has the funniest intro that I've read. It's Andrew Knowlton he was the restaurant editor for Bon Appetit. He wrote the foreword for this, and the first part of it was basically him telling a kind of embarrassing story joke because he could in print, that has nothing to do with the pizzeria, and then him talking about how Joe Badia decided to open up a 300 square foot pizzeria with no chairs, no phone, no slices, no delivery, 2 employees, and only 40 pies sold a day. But apparently this guy Joe has made every single pizza at this restaurant since it opened, and he says, but Joe Badia is a pizza savant. In the 4 years since opening his shop, he has made every pizza that's come out of his oven at Pizzeria Badia. If Joe's sick or at a wedding or did too many drugs at, say, a fish show and couldn't possibly make the pizza the next day, then Pizzeria Badia will be closed, and it's only happened once. So this guy really has like his hands on every single pizza. And then subsequently, Andrew Knowlton in 2015 in the July issue of Bon Appetit magazine declared his pizzeria the best pizza in America. So this guy has done some stuff, and it's just like very kind of cheeky humor, like, you know, he's drawn like on the photos and everything. And then the last section has not the last section, the 4th section has different composed pizzas, and there's all these little descriptions. So you've got like broccoli, charred onion, cream and chili pizza, roasted mushroom pizza, pistachio pesto pizza, Sicilian almond pesto pizza. So some really interesting combinations. He does also do stromboli pan pizza. And then there's a section on hoagies, sandwiches, and stuff like that. So he, I think he was from New York, but was living in Philadelphia. And he was saying, you know, outside of New York, New Jersey, a sandwich on a long roll is called a hoagie. And he said, if you were to use this pizza dough, he would use leftovers to make hoagie bread and make sandwiches with cold cuts from the deli next door. He said, if you were to do that with my pizza dough, you would be making, outside of New York, New Jersey, you'd be making the best sandwiches around, like you really could. So he gives you a couple alternate ways to use the dough. And the sandwiches are really beautiful too. So he said, let's see, this is like how he shows how to like form it into the big hoagies, but then he's got like the standard Italian hoagie, which we know here, but I don't know if people in New York realize in other parts of the country, like delis are not like they are here. So I grew up like Subway was what we had, and like I don't know why here I'm just like, why would you go to Subway? Like New York delis are so amazing, but I don't understand why they have like boar's head meat in other places, but I guess I don't know if there's not demand for it. I'm not really sure what it is, but I feel like it would be really great, like to have for my family that lives in the Midwest to be able to have things like this. But he's got like a roasted veggie hoagie, just really interesting ingredient assortments. There was one meatball hoagie. I guess we would just call them wedges here, right? Pretty much like a wedge sandwich. Oxtail, so it's just like not necessarily just standard sandwich recipes. Going back a little bit, the sausage section, he walks you through 2 types of homemade sausage. So one of them is his Uncle Pete's sausage that just has pork shoulder, salt, and pepper. He said his Uncle Pete swears by his sausage. It's the first that the author has ever tasted. And when he told him he started making sausage, he says, "Is there fennel in it?" And when he answered yes, he said, "That's not sausage." So like he's got very strong opinions, but I've wanted to experiment with grinding our own meat because I have a meat grinder attachment for the KitchenAid. So I'm curious to try this like basic sausage first, and then the recipe for sausage that they make at their pizzeria has those same things, but it also has chopped fresh sage, red pepper, fennel seeds, garlic, whole black peppercorns. And he talks all about like the temperature of the pork and stuff if you are going to grind it yourself, but just something like a homemade sausage on a pizza.
I feel like that would be so much healthier, to
Yes.
do that yourself and know exactly what's in it.
Yeah, because there's a lot of preservatives and
Yeah.
nitrates and nitrites and all that stuff. Yeah, I've been, it's one of those things that I keep being like, yeah, I want to try that out, and I haven't yet. But I think this is kind of like, it's got to be easy. You have to make sure everything is really cold when you do it. And he says you coat the cubes of meat when you cut them up, coat them with the salt and pepper, cover it, and let it sit in the fridge overnight for at least a few hours. And the cold pork grinds more easily after it's been like that in the refrigerator. So just things that like, how would you know unless you had done something like that before? So there's a lot of little like funny random quotes and stuff. So he's got like a picture of his dirty chef shoes covered in flour. And then he wrote, "I was just invited to the James Beard house to wash the dishes." Like it's a very witty kind of book, but he talks over the different types of pizzas that he makes. And then I want to show you what some of the white pizzas specifically, because you were talking about.
Did he have pesto alternative ideas like walnuts instead of?
Yeah, he had
pine nuts.
so one was almonds. Yeah, I'm not crazy about pesto. I think it's fine, but I don't love it.
That's how I won the heart of my husband, by making serving pesto from a jar. But then once his mother had all these basil plants at the end of the summer, I had homemade pesto coming out my ears. I now have basil leaves that I have to make into pesto, and I do have walnuts to use instead of pine nuts.
Yeah, I like it better. Yeah, instead of pine nuts too. Ooh, that looks nice.
That's the Sicilian almond pesto pizza.
Ooh.
So his pesto has raw unsalted almonds. It has tomatoes in it though, which you don't do, but and then basil, garlic, olive oil, and grated hard cheese and salt and pepper. I wonder if that's interesting about the tomatoes.
It brings to mind, at one point I was asked to give a course, food demonstration course for 3 or 4 weeks, BOCES. One of the BOCES I believe was, and pesto, the brown rice pizza was going to be one thing, of course, that I would share doing with them. But I took courses. I was waiting for people to sign up, which they never did. Well, never enough anyway. I was allowed to take a course, and I can't remember the chef's name. He was down at Kelly's at the train station in Peekskill. And he would do roast beef pizza on St. Patrick's Day for the folks there.
Ooh,
and then I also had training in the Cablevision. So I was hoping to go to his home in Rockland when he did his cooking demonstration.
I think she just
we just lost her.
Oh, she'll come back on.
We lost you. Well, it says she's, oh no.
Or maybe
that's a different person, maybe.
I'm not sure, because it could be both. I don't know.
Her connection was cutting out a lot. I could understand most of it.
I didn't.
She was talking about classes at BOCES.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't catch that. Yeah. All right. That book seems like it'd be really fun. It's like fun. His personality as well as the pizza and stuff.
It's got a ton of personality, and it's just
so good,
so pretty. This one. So this is dandelion greens Calabrian chili cream, and he has a whole section about how he does fresh cream. He adds fresh cream on his white pizzas, like from what he said. If you have a local farm, like that's the place to go to get it. And roasted red pepper pizza. And so the first picture of it is him eating it. You can't even see the picture, and then it's just like this gorgeous assortment. And the quote on this is, "I eat pizza and I sleep pizza, but I never drink pizza." So I guess he draws the line somewhere.
Nice. That seems like a just really fun book. Yeah.
It's super, and it was surprising. I thought the cover looked cool and it was about pizza. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to get that. I was not expecting this at all.
Yeah.
So it was a fun surprise. And this one also, this breakfast pizza with sausage, eggs, spinach, and cream.
Oh, nice.
So and then, like, it's just like the spreads and the photography. It's really gorgeous. I had brought also to show a couple of the other tools. One of these books talks about a lot of them talk about basic tools, but some talk about a bowl scraper if you're making your dough. So it's like a little flexible. I actually got this one from Bob of Bob and Bread Mill. I met him at the fancy food show. He was so nice.
Way. That's so funny.
Yeah. And he wears the outfit with the vest and he looks exactly like he does on the package. So I got a bowl scraper. So that's to get your dough. It's like a thin spatula. It's got a little angle and it's to really get on the edge of the bowl. And then this bench scraper. In my cooking classes, I usually use one that has sides on it because it holds ingredients, but this is just so you can kind of score things and cut straight down through the dough. This one's got measurements on it. So if you wanted to, if you were making gnocchi or something, or a pasta that you wanted to measure exactly, you can kind of use this as a guide. And this one also it's got a scoop in here. So if you could chop something, scoop it up, and leave it down and carry it like that, which is kind of cool. I don't use this one a ton, but it was listed in the book, so I thought I would share that. And then this ingredient, I recently made deep dish pizza dough. I made pizza dough with sourdough, my sourdough starter. And I saw on the King Arthur flour recipe, they recommended adding this pizza dough flavor. And it's a powder. It's also great on popcorn. And when you smell it, it smells like pizza. So this says it adds the perfect balance of cheese and garlic flavor to pizza doughs or other breads for an over-the-top delicious Italian style taste. Use a heaping teaspoon for each cup of flour in your recipe. So it's got cheddar cheese powder in it, buttermilk. It's really interesting, and it really adds a nice flavor to the.
Where did you say you got that, Ashley?
I got that from the King Arthur flour website.
Oh, okay. Mm-hmm.
No, I might have got it from Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
Either way, it's but yeah, it's great on if you air pop some popcorn and sprinkle a little of that on there. Let's see. Well, before we end, or before I get sidetracked down another book, our next session is Tuesday, September 28th at 6 p.m. Cook along. If you would like to cook along, you're welcome to sit and watch and chat if you'd like. We're making falafel spiced chickpea flatbreads with homemade tzatziki, and that's a recipe. It's one of the ones that's been the most popular on my website for a really long time. And I use store-bought naan. You could do it on a big pizza crust if you wanted a full-size pizza. The recipe makes enough for 2. You could stretch it to 3 because it makes enough tzatziki for plenty, but you might want to scale up. If you're feeding 4, you might want to double the chickpea portion. And that's a fun one. You could also do little mini naan to make a fun little appetizer, but this one's gotten rave reviews, and it's the flavors of falafel, but without having to form them and fry them. So it's a fun kind of street food, comfort food kind of mashup. And it's one that I like a lot, and it doesn't require a ton of heat to make, so it's still nice when it's still a little bit warm out. And then next month we have October's theme is, I wrote that on the wrong month.
I forgot actually just right this second.
Well, we have themes for the rest of the year. I know there's some holiday cooking. There's entertaining as one of the themes.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember if it was comfort food maybe, but they'll be up on the library calendar. I know for sure the next month, the next session is up there.
Yeah, and the dates are a little funny in October too.
With the holidays.
Yeah. So
yeah. October, it's the 5th. So it's actually going to be 2 weeks in a row. So it's September 28th, we're going to do the cooking class. And then on the 5th, we have the cookbook discussion.
That's what it was. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because there was some timing issues with some other things that were going on. There are so many really great specialty pizza cookbooks. And there's also books like Artisan Pizza and Flatbread in 5 minutes a day. So if you want to really kind of learn more about the bread portion, making your own breads for pizzas, that's a really good one. Another one for bread and pizza, flour, water, salt, yeast. So that's the fundamentals of artisan bread and pizza. So these are like, if you really, the crust is such an important part of the pizza. If you really want to kind of up your game, you can read more about that. And I feel like now with like the cooler weather coming, it's a good time to like experiment with heating your oven up to 500 degrees with a pizza steel in it and doing something like that.
Because I haven't wanted to do that in July. Yeah.
No, definitely not. This book, there was a lot of really great stuff in there too. Todd English's Rustic Pizza. He's a TV chef, right? Like that's,
I think
was he just one of those like celebrity chef restaurateurs that kind of ended up getting in there? It's funny. So the tagline on this is handmade artisan pies from your own kitchen, and he talks about how you should never trust a round pizza because a perfectly round pizza isn't like handmade or whatever. And he really has a great section on equipment tips and tricks. I feel like all these books do a pretty good job of that at the beginning, just to kind of give you an overview on what you need to have in your kitchen. He has a gluten-free pizza dough recipe, and he talks about tips for working with that. So if Beverly happens to watch this later, or you can just let her know that there's some information on gluten-free pizza dough. And then he's got recipes, and many of these books do have recipes for like their own sauces. Most of them use canned tomatoes because while you would think fresh tomatoes, especially in the summer, would be great, they're not always the best for sauce, and they have a really short season. But when you have canned tomatoes, it's like their peak freshness, they're processed really quickly, and they're canned, so they're at like an optimal flavor. And I didn't bring my food mill. I have my husband's grandmother's. She's from Italy. I have her food mill, and it's, if you use canned tomatoes, it's like a big, kind of like a big funnel shape that you can put over a pot or a bowl. It's got little hooks to like hang it onto there, and it's got a crank. So you put your canned tomatoes in there, or I mean, you can make baby food and stuff too, but you put canned tomatoes in there and you crank it, and this disc spins over a really fine mesh sieve. So it presses, you just get the liquid and like a puree through it, and it keeps the skins and the seeds up on top. Nice. It's a really handy tool.
Yeah,
you can use it for mashed potatoes also. That's one of the tools mentioned in a lot of these cookbooks. He's got a lot of great pizza recipes. Oh, yeah. Beverly. Oh, is her audio connected?
Not sure yet. Yeah.
Okay.
She's getting there. Yeah.
So he's got recipes for the crusts, the sauces. He does a pesto also. Herb oils, which is kind of cool. So he talks you through how to make a basil oil, a mint oil. Oh, Beverly, can you hear us?
Yeah, the battery died. Sorry.
Oh, okay. I was just telling her this Todd English's Rustic Pizza cookbook has a section on how to make gluten-free dough for pizzas. It's got like the whole process on how to do it, and with tips in there if you need to make gluten-free. And then so he's got all sorts of different toppings, and some of the stuff is a little, the photography makes me wonder if this is really some of the recipes, because there's a recipe for blackened Brussels sprouts, and I've never seen anything less blackened. It's like they barely look browned, but I'm wondering if it's just the photography. So he's got a lot of really interesting combinations. This one's marinated artichokes with herbed goat cheese and shaved Parmesan. He's got curried cauliflower naan pizza, roasted cauliflower, mushroom, and onion. butternut squash and sage with roasted garlic bechamel. So like different, I love the idea of putting like different sauces and not always a red sauce. Though most of these books have recipes for at least one red sauce, which is pretty great.
Blacken the piece by reheating it, putting it under the broiler. You could blacken broccolis.
Oh, yeah. Oh, charred broccolini. I love. It's like the thinner cousin of broccoli. It's expensive though, but if you put it on a sheet pan and you broil it or even bake it really high until it gets a little crispy, it's so good because the it's not called leaves. What do they call it on a broccoli? Like the flowers?
Flowers, yeah.
Flowers. Yeah, they the texture is so much nicer. That's just kind of like lighter on broccolini than it's not as compact as a regular broccoli. Yeah, broccolini is really nice.
What I was in the middle of saying before my battery died was that the chef, to get us ready for an evening course, it was adult ed, he cooked a pizza. Of course, he had the pizza kits with the pans and the whatever to sell, but he showed you how to substitute. And 1 week it was like half mozzarella and light mozzarella, whole mozzarella and light mozzarella. And then of course, one time he just had olives on it. I've never liked olives. After that night, I love olives.
That's the thing. If it's a really good ingredient and it's done right, sometimes like that's what you need to really appreciate an ingredient, I feel like.
That's pretty cool.
Awesome.
Yeah. Just completely change after. Yeah, that's great.
I'm gonna honorable mention because it's 801, but honorable mention this book, Bianco by Chris Bianco, blew me away. It's he is the first pizzaiolo who received a James Beard Award. So this book has really, really interesting recipes. That's not a pizza, hang on. There we go. He really talks about quality of ingredients, and you can like feel from reading what he writes about the things, you can really feel his passion for the food. So this is a really, really cool book, and he writes that time is the invisible ingredient here. So like sometimes it's not an ingredient you think about as an ingredient, but that's like it's a really important one. So this one was a sleeper hit. I thought it looked good, but I was really, really impressed with this one.
Great. That's kind of interesting too, because with the time, because we always think of pizza as like our fast, I'll grab a pizza fast meal, but like give it the time and care it needs. Yeah.
Well, it's fast if you're grabbing it if someone else is making it. And it's fast once the components are ready. It comes together fast. And that's, a lot of those books talk about that too. It's like once you have the pieces in place, it comes together quickly. And a lot of the stuff you can do ahead of time. So it can be a quick meal. It can also take quite a while depending on what you're putting with it.
Do you remember what they said about gluten-free? Any tips there that you remember right away?
That I remember offhand, no, but I know
you have to work the dough differently, or
I think you have to he says, just as with any yeast dough, gluten-free dough takes practice. If time is short, you can always use commercially substitute an actual produced one. He says, because it's a little trickier to form a lip on a gluten-free dough, I suggest you bake the pizzas at 450 on parchment paper, one designated for high temperatures, on top of the baking stone or a parchment lined sheet pan. This will help catch any escaped cheese, sauce, or toppings. This crust takes a bit longer to bake than a regular thin crust pizza. Pull it out as soon as it turns a nice golden brown. So the seeping of ingredients is a little different, I guess, on a pizza like this because you can't get that ridge as easily. So that's one thing. I know there are. I'm guessing there are in some more bread making books, you could find sections on tips for gluten-free, maybe more than this was just like 1-page spread of this.
Yeah, I have a grandson, so thinking on that level.
Yeah. Some of the bread making books I think would maybe be a good to peruse for gluten-free tips.
Okay.
Or use chicken.
Or use chicken. I love that. Yeah, definitely. That's great. All right. Well, thank you, Ashley and Beverly, everyone. Yeah.
Thank you for joining.
Remember, we're back on the 28th, right?
Yep,
At
at 6
6
p.m.
o'clock. At 6
for
o'clock,
cooking.
yeah.
I'm
Yep.
having surgery on my nose, so if I make it, I'll be lucky.
Okay, well,
Well,
good luck
on
and
the
we hope you do.
surgery.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks for
Thanks,
joining
everybody. All right. Take care. All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Be
Thank
well.
you.